Alex Brueckmann. I hope I pronounced that correctly, my man. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Stu. Great to be here. Great to be a guest on your great show.
Absolutely, man. I'm looking forward to it. And I would love if we kind of kick this thing off, if you could give people sort of an inside look to like, what did life look like for little Alex as you were growing up in Germany, and kind of, fill us in. What'd your life look like?
I guess I had a very, very normal childhood until the age of 6 years, when my parents decided to move within Germany about 250 kilometers to a completely different area. Different in the sense of how it looked, how it sounded. So Germany is a country that is very diverse in the sense of dialects that's being spoken, and also how the landscape looks like. So when I was 6 years old, we moved, and things kind of changed from there. I was a very happy child. And I guess from the age of 7 onwards, when I then went to school, things shifted a bit. And I don't want to say I had a bad time growing up, far from that. But it just, when you're grown up and you reflect on your childhood, you realize where some of your limitations, fears actually are coming from. And I think it was that time when this first shift happened in my life, leaving my kindergarten friends behind and moving to this area where I basically didn't know many people.
Yeah. So was it like when you moved to this area, it was just so foreign that did you like kind of go into like a shell almost, in a sense?
I wouldn't say I went into a shell. I was very outgoing always as a child, and that never really changed. I just realized that I wasn't as welcome as I thought. People were very reserved. So other kids were reserved, but this is kind of the culture in this area. People are reserved, but kind of 6-year-old, right? So I didn't really get that.
Right.
So I was not, to put it mildly, I was not the most popular kid.
Yeah.
And that kind of, I tried to overcome it by being even more outgoing, which kind of then shifted in some aggressiveness even when I didn't get what I wanted when I was a kid. So that was a really interesting time in my life. And I think it lasted until I was like 15, 16, 17, when you start to really get your head around things.
Yeah.
But that took a while. And to be honest, that was not the best time of my life, between 13, 14, 15, when you're trying to figure out life,
Yeah, it's such an interesting stage of life. And it's interesting you say that story. It reminds me of when I think I was in 6th grade. So however old you are in 6th grade, I think you're like 12.
Yeah.
And I used to always walk out of one of my classrooms and I would meet up with like 2 of my friends, and I would always come out with just such a big smile on my face. I just loved smiling. And one day I walked out and one of my friends was like, "Why do you always walk out with like a smile? Like you're always smiling and you always have a smile when you walk out." And like, he said it in such a like way that almost felt like condescending, and it was like, "Oh, I should like not be like smiling's not okay." And for real, and that's like what I got. And from then until probably when I was like 19, so like 7 years or so, I just never smiled as much in life. And then I got introduced to personal development, and I had this massive realization that like I still love smiling, and like because of that one comment as a child doesn't mean that like the definition that I took from that doesn't have to define my life. And it was like something as simple as smiling, but it was like so crazy, like you're saying, how these little moments when we're younger truly can like create these crazy stories in our life. And we have to kind of build this awareness around like, what were some of the experiences I had? And then ask ourselves, I know you do a lot with like identity work, ask ourselves like, do we want to keep this story in our identity and have it shape who we are? Or do we not?
It's like the little kid that gets told by a stressed out parent when they come home after work that they should be quiet and shouldn't sing. And the parents maybe say like something, "You can't sing, stop it." Just, walk by.
Yeah.
But the kid takes it in and might never sing again, only to realize at the age of 30 that they actually love singing.
Yeah. Yeah. I have another story on that, but we won't go there. It wasn't with my parents. I was a choir teacher, said, stand in the back and just lip sing and pretend you're singing because you're tone deaf. And I swear I could have been a good singer. But something I have a question for you is like, I know you work with a lot of people, do a lot of leadership. Like, let's say that there's someone that's listening to this and they're realizing that like maybe they have some of these stories, or maybe they don't even consciously quite know these stories. Like, how can someone begin to kind of like shift themselves out of some of these experiences they had when they were a kid that aren't serving them in their life? Like, how can they let go of that or kind of get away from that?
I mean, obviously you can find professional help for that, right? So be it a coach that can help you just by asking some questions that you kind of reflect on. There's a lot of self-help out there also. And by the way, I think this is something everyone should do. Even if you had the greatest childhood ever, at least in your memory, it makes perfect sense to dig deeper. And if you're very happy, ask yourself, why am I very happy? So we can come from both ends here. And of
Love
course,
that.
if you figure out that there is some unresolved things underneath the surface that are still boiling inside you, and when you go closer to them, you feel the pit in your stomach, then it is definitely time to talk to a counselor, to really a professional psychologist that can help you with these overcoming these barriers or these feelings. Because as long as we are held by our past, we are not unleashed and can't go for our full potential. So we need to overcome those moments that always hold us on the ground rather than giving us wings.
Right. And I think just like you said, it's like when you get closer to something and you feel that feeling in your stomach, it's like, as much as you don't want to, you got to step further into it. Like, you got to explore that. You got to pick that apart. You got to dissect it, because if you don't, it's like the longer you wait to work on some of these things that may be like affecting you in a negative way in your life, it's just going to continue to stack up. And like you said, if you're happy, like, also dig into that. Like, why am I happy? Why am I joyful? Why am I energy rich or energized? Because if you learn more of that, then you can learn how to have more of what you want and less of what you don't want.
The reason I said that, to approach it from both ends, is when we are grown-ups, we pass on the way we think and the way we behave and our belief systems, we pass them on to our children. And the moment we know and understand why we were so happy back then, the moment we can consciously use it to help raise happy kids. At the same time, when we don't go there, there are underlying patterns that are not healthy. And if we pass them on unconsciously, subconsciously, this is not going to help the next generation. So we need to break through the mold here and break the barrier in order to have less trauma or drama in the next generation. I think this is just something we owe our kids.
Yeah, true that. And a beautiful way to look at it too. And so, like, let's say we go back into your story then. So you're growing up, you move at 6 years old, some things kind of shift. Eventually you get a little bit older, you start to realize, okay, that place was just kind of that way, and you kind of start to grow out of it a little bit. I'm curious for you, like, if we fast forward even a little bit more in your life, if you could go to the moment of where you felt like you stepped in the quote unquote real world, do you remember that moment of like, all right, I'm like going to the real world? And I'm curious, could you kind of talk us through like what was that like for you, and how did you get through that?
I think I stepped into the real world twice, I would say. The first time when I was 20 years old, and I just had finished my military service back in Germany. It was still mandatory at that point in time. And I had no idea whatsoever what I wanted to do with my life. Really, no idea. When the military service ended, it was like, now what?
Yeah.
And there was not much really in that time. We're talking 1999, 1998, it was pre-internet basically. So it was all very young. The big hype just started, with Yahoo and all those companies.
Yeah.
And it was very far away from rural Germany where I grew up. So it was like, what am I doing with my life? And then I heard this radio ad that the regional radio station there, they were looking for interns. And I was always very into radio. I listened to radio all the time. It would tootle all day because my dad loved music so much. And I was like, hey, kind of cool. Music all the time. Of course, I didn't realize that there is more to radio than just music, but I kind of started. And I had the first real paid proper job. So I became a radio journalist, which I loved. It was like, just imagine being a kid going into a candy store and getting rewarded with even more candy just because you step into the store.
Yeah,
That's how that feels. I loved it.
that's awesome.
And then, 2001, 9/11 happened, and things went completely south in the privately financed, let's say, entertainment industry. So a lot of companies didn't know what would happen with the economy, so they stopped their ad spend, and it wasn't really good for me because I lost my job because of that. Which kind of was the second time I realized, so now this is real life. And I think this was the moment when I actually took responsibility. It was not a coincidence, again, that I heard an ad in the radio. It was this time something, okay, you're in deep trouble now, my friend. You are in your early 20s. You just had 3 amazing years. You earned quite some money, but you blew it all because you just thought it would always be like that, right?
True that. Yeah.
What do you do with your life now? And I realized that everything I wanted, everything I reflected on and I wrote down on a piece of paper, I was like, can't do that because you don't have a college degree. Can't do that because of that. And I went down the list and I realized I had left school basically too early. So I went back to school 2.5 years full time as a grown up, got my high school degree, and then went to university and studied business administration because I realized I needed to understand the world of business and economy way more because I couldn't see coming. I couldn't see the .com bubble burst coming. I couldn't see those things. And I was like, this is not rocket science, dude. You've got to understand this life better. Yeah. So this is when I then really stepped into life once again. After university, graduating from this university, joining one of the largest media organizations in the world as an executive assistant and starting to dig into the world of strategy, business strategy. And this was when I finally found my passion. I was not happy at that point in time, though, I have to admit, because you realize that with a lot of, let's say, stepping into this corporate world is not for everyone. And at the beginning, I hoped it was for me, and I threw myself into it. It took years until I realized that it's not for me. Then I went into management consulting, and this wasn't for me either in a certain way, because it was more about people than about processes than it was about people. And only at that point in time, having worked in strategy all the time, right? It was the same topic, but in different contexts. Only then it was this moment when I finally stepped into my power. This was in 2013 when I realized, you know what? You will not run away from this again. This is what you like. You love strategy work. You love working with people.
Yeah.
You have to find a job or invent a job that allows you to do that, because that's what you're passionate about. And that's when I became an entrepreneur, basically.
Yeah. Wow. I there's like so much awesomeness to unpack in all of that. I think kind of one thing I'd love to touch on, the first part you said is like, and I can relate to this in such a massive way in my life, is when at one point in my life, I've felt lost a couple times as well. For me, one of the times I went back to school as well, because it's like, if you're so lost and you're so uncertain, and if anybody listening to this is in that place, it's like going to school is, if you're lost, is a beautiful way to kind of try things, taste things, experiment with different things, get a taste of many different things so you can get an idea of where is that next direction going to go. And so definitely agree with that. And for anybody that's listening to this, it's like, if you're lost, and you can do it nowadays for expensive if you go one route, but also like cheap. You could go to a community college. You could do something where you could take a couple courses and kind of try things.
There are so many online courses for free available. The array is like endless. You can start to dig into the music of the Beatles for free, and you can start to work towards a rocket engineering degree. Everything for free, everything online. It's there.
Yeah, it's like you just gotta look for it.
Yeah.
Right. So like maybe the thing right here is like, if you're listening to this and you're feeling lost, like Google the thing that you have an interest in and like take the course, like sign up for a free education thing that you can learn and like learn more about it. And one thing too that I think's really interesting is you started to go into this like first it was I got out of the military trying to figure it out. Now you're working at the radio, and now it from what I'm hearing is it sounds much more like you went into the second time around of like having much more intentionality. I don't know if that's a word. You were much more intentional, right? About
Totally.
like I need to figure out where I'm going to go, and I need to be intentional and smart about this. And I'd be curious for you, like, do you think that there are a lot of people going through life unintentionally? And like, if someone's listening to this and they're feeling like crap, like I haven't been intentional about the direction of my life, how do you think someone can start to be more intentional about that process?
I have thought a lot about these questions too, honestly, because when you've gone through a process like this, you'd be like, this is probably normal. So I'm probably not the only one struggling with those things. That
Yeah.
would be weird because I'm not kind of a guru or someone who has a life that has been lived only once. So those
Yeah.
kinds of experiences that I had, they must be normal. There must be other people. And I realized that when I went back to school, because the school that I was in was for grown-ups. So I was there 25 years of age, and there were people that were 40, and there were people that were 19. So I quickly realized, man, you're not alone in this. So stop stressing yourself out over this. This is happening to so many people. You are not some kind of weirdo who messed up his life. This is just normal. And the
Yeah.
good thing is, if you live in a country where your educational system is, let's say, open enough to also welcome those guys who just need some more time, then you can just press the reset button and pack some turbochargers into your backpack and see where this goes to.
Yeah.
So I would
I
not
love
want to
that.
say there are people that go through the world that live their life unintentionally. I would say there are different levels of being intentional. There are some people that are, the enlightened ones, those who are kind of living outside the normal space, I would say.
Yeah.
And then there are people that have gone through severe illnesses, for example, like you. And I'm pretty sure that this is kind of cathartic in a way that it helps you understand what's really important in life. So this is a different level of being intentional about what you want to do for the rest of your days. Then there are people like me that have just struggled in the beginning to find their true passion.
Yeah.
And then there are people, and a very good friend of mine, she's one of those guys who she was always happy. You take a look at her and be like, why are you happy all the time? Everything just looks perfect. But these are the people that you then realize, those are the ones who often have their first midlife crisis somewhere around the age of 40, when they realize they've just fulfilled social norms that they were born into. So they were lucky enough to find a boy that they loved or fell in love with very soon. And it was their first boyfriend, and they got married. And the kids just came without any problems.
Yeah.
They bought a place, and it's beautiful. They have the friends, they have the job, they have it all. And then they, at some point in time, start to think, now what? Is that all?
Right.
And they start to find direction in a different way than you and myself.
Yeah.
So just because someone seems to have this straight line in life doesn't mean for me that they were not intentional about it. Of course, it looks like everything just fell into place. And some of them really worked hard for it, and others didn't. But I think being intentional in life is more about your mindset and how you show up every day than it is about your job title, the car you drive, or the career path you put intentionally in front of you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And I love how you said it too, that it's like, because I did not have this similar thought right away where I was like, everybody else, like there's other people going through this. But I think that's such a beautiful way to look at it. It's like I went back to school when I was, I think, 23, maybe. And it was a very similar thing where it was like, whoa, there's like this other lady's like 60 and she's here, and this person's like in their 40s, and then that person's like 18 years old. So it is so like stress relieving to just
Yes.
let yourself know like this is normal. Like there's a quote I was just reading the other day, and it said like someone got married at 25 and divorced 5 years later. Someone didn't find the love of their life till 35. Someone had no idea what they wanted to do, and then when they were 40 they figured out what their life purpose was. And it was like the whole thing of this quote was like, you're not late, you're not early, you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
I think it's super important for us to understand that, for example, when you take a look at the biggest founders in history, some of them were 60 years old.
Yeah.
And why? Because it took them a lifetime to learn what they needed in order to build their own company. So there is so much out there in terms of social norms, expectations of family, of friends. And far too often we make these expectations our own rules. And the happiest people that I've met in my life were the people who very early in life had someone who told them, listen, there are things that you can do with your life, which many people do, like getting married, like finding a paid job, but you need to figure out whether these things are for you. I'm not going to tell you to study, I don't know, medicine just because I'm a doctor. So, and I have an 18-month-old son. For me, seeing him grow up, it's like, I'm really curious to see what this little dude is going to do with his life, because I'm not going to tell him. I'm going to be for him if I'm going to be there for him if he has questions and if he wants an opinion, but I'm not going to tell him to go into business just because I did.
Right.
So those thoughts, they came to me very late in life, but it's not too late. It's the right time because it's now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's two things that pop into my head is one, even with you have a daughter or son?
A son.
A son. So like my parents, they grew up in a similar parenting philosophy of you of like, I'm not going to tell him he needs to do this or that or the other. My parents were very much more just like encourage, don't discourage. Like, oh, you want to try this? Yeah, go try it. You want to do that? Like, go try it. And it's like, because of that, I'm so grateful, I guess you could say. Because I think sometimes it is, you got to do this or you got to go that way or you got to move in this. And it's like, to truly figure out what you want to do, you have to listen to yourself. And like, I was just having a conversation. We have like a Finding Direction community. And I was just talking to someone in the community the other day, and in their current phase of life, they're a paramedic. They volunteer for this like suicide prevention society. And they do all of these things where from the outside, someone would go, okay, you're making good money. Like you're literally saving lives. Like you're doing all this incredible stuff. But she's sort of at the point where she's like, you know, I kind of feel like there's something else I want to do, and I know what it is, and I want to start moving there. And I think so many times we have those moments in our life, or people go through those, where it's like society says this is the way, or society says, hey, you're doing good, everything's okay, like you're getting paid, you're like, it's okay, like you're doing well, like don't mess this up, basically. When the reality is like, if you're feeling pulled to something else, or your heart's calling you to do something else, it's like, if you never take that leap to pursue that feeling, that similar to you when you were saying like, I either need to find this job or create this job. Like if we never follow that calling, that feeling, it'll eat at us until the day that we die. And I think it's just such a real thing that it's like, you gotta listen to yourself. You gotta follow that voice.
It makes us sick.
Literally.
I mean, take a look at the people around you, people that are miserable in their jobs, and they can be very young, kind of like very grateful that they scored this well-paid job after university, maybe in a time of difficulty when the economy wasn't that booming. So they stick with it because they are grateful, because they fear that they will never find something similar again.
Mm-hmm.
And they downplay everything negative that comes with it, especially when it comes to mental health. Then there is the 40-year-old that just bought a home that is kind of financially, the family is financially dependent on her or him. And you don't step away from that job easily because you provide for the family.
Yeah.
But there is something else that comes with it. And the moment we neglect our personal self, our true calling, our hopes and dreams for too long, we make them die. And then what are we without them, right?
Yeah.
We are just functioning machines that feed the corporate machinery. And if we stick with that for some time, that's okay. We can power through something.
Right.
If we see the light at the end of the tunnel, if we know that this is just a phase. But if the phase becomes the normal, and there is another phase and another phase and another phase, we need to break through that cycle. Otherwise, we literally get sick. We get mentally sick. We get physically sick, and those things are connected. And it's nothing you want to do. You only have this one life. So I think in the end, we need to figure out what we want to do. We need to take the time on the one side, and on the other side, if we are already in a place where we know we are not happy, we should ask ourselves, what is the cost of no action? And this answer will give us the nudge to act. Because most of the time we don't ask ourselves this question. We ask ourselves the question, what is it that I have to lose if I step away from it? Ask yourself, what is it that you can gain by stepping away from it? And it's not about money. It's about mental health. It's about happiness. And this might sound gooey for many people, but you only live this one life.
Yeah.
Make it as fulfilling as you possibly can, because it's not the meetings that you didn't attend that you will regret when you lie on your deathbed. It's the crazy stuff that you didn't do with your kids, with your friends. It's the holidays that you did not go to. Yeah. I don't know. It's just when you've been in a place where it was dark and you've found the light, this is the most fulfilling piece that I've ever held in my hand. And I will not let this go ever again. Having found happiness after 10 years in the corporate world, I almost gave up searching for it. And my back then wife, she always told me, I'm happy because I found my true passion in life very early. And she did. And she was very, very happy with the job she had. Yeah. And I was the complete opposite. And because I was so different, I took a look at her and started to ask myself some questions. I mean, that it somehow then ended up in a divorce was not intentional, but it was part of the process, I think. And sometimes you need to understand that you need to break things in order to make space for new things. And this is also true when you're lost and you need direction in how you, just in a professional environment, in a personal environment.
Yeah.
If you're stuck in a marriage that doesn't make you happy, it's as devastating as being stuck in a job that doesn't make you happy.
Dang. Yeah, that was, I think for anybody listening to this, you need to go listen to that last 10 minutes again on replay. And I think that's such a great way to look at it. Like, what is the cost of no action, right? Because like truly, sometimes it's easier for us as humans to move. Like if there's pain from it, sometimes we'll move quicker than, oh, well, if I leave, I'm going to be happier and this and that and the other. Like sometimes that doesn't move us as much as what's the cost of no action? We go, well, I'm going to stay miserable for the next 5 years. If I'm here for another 5 years, I'm going to maybe I'm going to have money, but and if we can go into those are the things that, like you said, are going to give us the kick in the butt to take that next step. And I think that's just such a brilliant way to look at it. And so I think for anybody that's listening to this right now, like truly sit down and maybe the rest of today ponder this question of like, what is the cost of not taking an action? And that can really give you some perspective on taking this next step in your life, right? It's like, it will give you so much clarity. And so, Alex, you are a wealth of knowledge, man. I know we could be here for hours. I'm curious. I have two last questions for you. One, if people want to get more info on you, see what you're up to, everything that you're doing, where's the best place for them to find you?
So during this conversation, we touched on several elements, so people will probably have figured out that I'm a strategy consultant. So I help entrepreneurs and business owners to actually get their head around the topic of business strategy, which is not something you would expect. People are always like, but you're a company leader, so you need to know about strategy, right? No, that's not how it works. We become entrepreneurs or we run businesses because we are passionate about a topic. It doesn't necessarily mean that every company owner has a business background,
for sure,
an academic background in business administration. So far from that. So if you want to know more about that stuff, just go to alexthestrategist.com. There is a lot of free stuff available, even if you just want to dip your toes into this topic. There are articles that you can read. I provide several toolkits and checklists for free. You can just download them and just entertain the thought of maybe becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I love it. And we'll put all that in the show notes as well, so everybody, you can go there and grab that. And so the last question I have for you, we ask this to every guest on the show because we're about how people find direction, but doing it through action. And so I would be curious for you, what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
You mentioned already to sit down and ask yourself, what is the cost of no action? So if you are somewhere where you're miserable, ask yourself this question. Let's assume you're not miserable and you're kind of let's say in the last year of high school, or you just started college, and you look around and everyone is kind of figuring it out. At least that's what you think. And then you take a look at social media and be like, yeah, they're definitely figuring it out. I'm kind of the only one who doesn't, right? So 24 to 48 hours, I would suggest you sit down, maybe have your favorite, coffee, tea, glass of beer, whatever you prefer with you, and ask yourself some questions around, when I'm 60 years old, how does my life look like? When I'm 40 years old, how does my life look like? And in maybe 5 years' time, how should my life look like? Those questions over time will give you perspective. They are far away, but the closer you get to the now, you will understand that you will only get there if you take action. If you do things differently, maybe, than you've done them until now. Yeah. And I think the most important learning for me personally in finding direction was to be brutally honest with myself. Because we kind of, and at least I did that, and I saw that with friends, we kind of try to rationalize too much that what we do is the right thing, because let's be honest, who loves admitting to themselves that they're kind of messing it up right now? So we can always rationalize about it. The moment we take the BS aside and are honest with ourselves, the moment we step into our power, because there is no growth, there is no development if you're not honest with yourself. Only on honesty you can base a happy life, and this is what it's all about. This life is just about the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, that is beautiful. Got to be brutally honest with yourself. 100 million% agree. And it may be not the most fun temporarily.
Oh, no.
But it's like, there's a quote out there and it goes, if you do what is easy now, life will be difficult later. And if you do what's difficult now, life will be easy later. So if you can act on that, make it a little difficult right now by being brutally honest, asking yourself some of these things, looking at your life, you can live a beautiful life later. And so, Alex, I just want to say again, man, thank you so much for being here. A wealth of knowledge. Everybody go to the links in the show notes and definitely check out what Alex is up to. And other than that, man, again, thank you for being here. Massively, massively appreciate it.
Stu, thank you so much for all the work that you put out there. You are really giving people direction. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.